Joining me now is Bucky Brooks, NFL draft expert from NFL Network. And Bucky, it's always great to talk to a fellow Raleigh, North Carolina brethren. Always good to, be able to chop it up. And this is an opportunity right now that for a lot of people, it's draft week. But for you, this is kind of your Super Bowl week, right? I mean, this is all this work has been coming up to this point for you. You've been watching film, looking at these guys. For you, what is this week like? Is it crazier than others? Is it just another day? Talk to me.
So no, it's really crazy because you do spend a lot of time like knowing these kids. And for me, I've known a lot of them since high school. So watching them go through their process, watch them go through college, now seeing them on the verge of realizing their dreams, like it kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit. But then the other part of it is having been a scout, having been in the rooms like, some of the Vikings officials are and what they're going through now, like knowing what it's like the week leading up into the draft. Yeah, there's a little bit of excitement. There's also some anxiety because there's a lot of uncertainty about how the draft weekend is going to play out. And so you're trying to prepare yourself for all of the different scenarios while also recognizing, like, man, this is a great time to watch a bunch of kids kind of get to the end of kind of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, this is their first time ever doing this at this level. Like you say, you've been in those draft rooms. What is that first one like?
Look, it's going to be different. It's a little bit of a challenge because everyone is trying to get on the same page. You're trying to make sure that the communication is right. You're trying to kind of play it out ahead of time. So if you are on the clock and something crazy happens, a player gets picked before you expect him to pick, and now there's another player that you like but didn't expect to be there. Are you ready to pull the trigger because you got all the background and medical information together? With Kevin O'Connell and those guys, hey, are we building the team in the image that we talked about? Are we staying true to the board and all of those things? And so the first time is always difficult because you never really work together. And so what you're hoping is out of this experience, that bond and that chemistry and the connectivity shows up and everybody walks away happy over the weekend.
That's the ultimate goal. Everyone walks away. And I feel like a lot of Vikings fans will be happy this weekend if they draft a cornerback, whether that's in the second or third round. But a lot of Vikings fans are saying the 12th overall pick. In your latest mock draft 3.0, you got the Vikings selecting a cornerback also. Everyone is saying Derek Stingley Jr. You got us selecting Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. Why is that?
So here's the thing, man. The corners, I think this is a really solid class. And there's a lot of intrigue and fascination over Derek Stingley Jr. because his freshman year, 2019, man, he was the best cornerback in the country. And that included everybody that was coming out. Super talented, 5-star recruit, goes to LSU, steps on the field and is a dominant player. Outstanding instinct, size, could cover one-on-one. And, man, they talk about the one-on-ones that he had with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase on the practice field. That stuff is legendary when you get an opportunity to pull out the tape and then you watch them play. For the last 2 years, injuries and inconsistency prevented him from playing at that level. Well, now you find out that maybe that injury happened a lot sooner than we thought, and maybe that impacted his play and the inconsistency. So now people are back on him. So I don't know if he'll even get to 12 because of his talent. So now you have to look at, well, who's right after that? And so to me, the guys who could be in play for the Vikings would be Andrew Booth from Clemson and then Trent McDuffie from the University of Washington. Both of these guys are similar in terms of they're rock solid players, very balanced in how they play, can utilize a bunch of different techniques, play in man or zone, and do a lot of things. And I think for Vikings fans, they have to get used to a different style of defense that will be played up there. Instead of the man-to-man and stuff that we saw from Mike Zimmer, it might be a little more off coverage, a little more eyes on the quarterback playing zone, a little more emphasis on being able to take the ball away. And so you got to have guys that can play in space and do that. And they also need to be able to tackle well. Because when you play more zone, you got to be able to get wide receivers to the ground.
Yeah, and speaking of wide receivers, I've seen a couple of mock drafts basically saying, well, the Vikings, they addressed some of those needs in the free agency with signing Zadarius Smith. So do you think they're in a position to possibly go best player available over cornerback, or cornerback needs to be that first overall selection if he's there?
No, I think in general what you want to do is you always want to go best player available because worst case, when you build a roster that has the best players in all of these drafts, you end up having a really good roster. And what you like to think is, if I have a surplus in one area, I can trade off an asset to get the asset that I need in another. So you never want to turn down a good player to get an average player at another spot that was a need. So for the Vikings, they need to stay true to the board. And the best player that's available at 12 and the rest of their picks, take the best player and figure out how to incorporate that player to the fabric of the team, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to reach for someone who doesn't necessarily grade out this, but it allows us to fill out the depth chart. You begin to make mistakes when you have these crazy reaches.
All right, 2019 NFL draft, when we were going through the combine process, you were on record basically saying, hey, Vikings fans, y'all need to pay attention to this guy named Irv Smith Jr. He can ball. He fits this offense. Look at him now. He's going to be a key contributor to this Minnesota Vikings team 4 years after that. We should select him in the second round next year. But also, this safety group for this 2022 NFL draft pool is pretty deep, too. What's more of a priority, tight end or safety?
You know, it's really interesting because when I look at the depth chart, like you have Harrison Smith, but at some point you want to start grooming the next guy. He's been an outstanding player, but you want to make sure you have a young guy that is ready and available for if and when the curtains close on Harrison Smith, that you feel good about it. This year's safety class, I mean, there are a ton of guys that can play and a ton of guys that offer versatility and outstanding traits. So if you want the hitter, Lewis Seen from Georgia is the guy that is the old school hitter. Like if you want the old school guy that can come down and kind of knock the taste out your mouth, kind of be the enforcer in the middle of the field, that's what he does. When you look at his tape, man, you just see him run through people on contact. There's another kid, Jawan Brisker from Penn State, very athletic, but he's more of a box player. So depending upon the style of play and what you want to do, there are guys. Jalen Petrie from Baylor, versatile. A guy that can play nickel. He can come off the edge and blitz. He can get in the deep middle if you need to. So there are a ton of guys that are available. And so as Ed Donatel puts his hands on this defense and determines how he really wants to play, I think there are plenty of guys that can kind of fill those voids.
All right, so Vikings fans, we're excited. This is the time of the year where the optimism is at an all-time high. You signed Zadarius Smith, Patrick Peterson is back. You got all these great players on this Minnesota Vikings roster. Now you got the draft. How confident should Vikings fans be knowing that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell has put us in a position to be able to go best player available or a cornerback if that's what is at the draft, if that is what is at the 12th overall pick when we select?
Well, no, I think they should feel really confident because when you look at the Vikings, there's not like what I would call glaring holes where when you look at their roster, there's like this flashing red light that, hey, we need to make sure that we solve this or we can't play. I think they've done a really good job of signing players. So this is a team that if we had to roll out the ball today, they could play and play effectively. You have a veteran quarterback coming back in Kirk Cousins, who has a history with the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. That should enable the offense to get the going. And then it's a matter of how long does it take for the defense to get rolling. Signing Zadarius Smith was big. Getting the Neil Hunter back is even bigger. And if you can get those guys going with Eric Hendricks and Ed just kind of getting this defense playing at a good level, yeah, the Vikings can close ground on the division rivals and make some noise, maybe a playoff team.
Well, we're less than a week away from knowing who the newest members of the Minnesota Vikings team will be. Bucky, I know you'll be there. Looking forward to your insight, your takes, and appreciate your time today. Looking forward to it.
Hey, thanks so much, man.
Yes, sir.